Today we are talking about something many men quietly struggle with but rarely admit. Why trying to impress women keeps backfiring and what to do instead. And this conversation matters because it can genuinely shift the way you see yourself, your relationships, and the way you show up in the world. After years of working closely with men who felt overlooked, ignored, or constantly not enough, I began noticing a painful repeating pattern. Men were not struggling because they lacked value. They struggled because they were performing confidence, performing strength, performing charm, performing a version of themselves they believed would earn approval, and every time the same thing happened, the harder they tried to impress, the more invisible they felt. Many men have told me they feel like they are auditioning for a role they will never get, or that women seem to like them only when they are pretending, but not when they are being themselves. This is not weakness, it is conditioning, and it quietly drains a man from the inside, because trying to impress someone places you in emotional submission without you noticing. Today we are breaking this cycle and exploring the shift that leads to real, meaningful connections. Instead of temporary validation, the first thing to understand is why trying to impress women weakens your presence. When a man shifts into performance mode, he unconsciously places the other person above himself. Instead of showing who he is, he begins acting like who he thinks she wants him to be. In the moment you disconnect from your true identity, your presence becomes smaller, weaker, and less grounded. Men often walk away from dates feeling tired, not because the date was difficult, but because they spent the entire time managing an edited version of themselves. Performance is fear wearing confidence as a disguise. The other person may not consciously detect it, but they feel the pressure, the effort, the lack of natural ease. And that creates emotional distance. Women respond to stability, clarity, authenticity, and groundedness, not to forced charisma or polished personas. When you are performing, your insecurity leaks through every gesture, every sentence, and every silence. Strength is not loud, strength is steadiness, and once a man understands that, he naturally stops trying to impress and starts expressing himself instead. The second lesson is the power of being unapologetically yourself. Many men shrink without realizing it. They soften their personality, over-explain their intentions, flatten their intensity, or filter their honesty because somewhere in life they were told they were too much, too emotional, too quiet, too serious to direct or to honest. Men carry these messages for years and eventually treat their authentic self like something that needs editing. And when you constantly adjust yourself to be accepted, you never feel grounded or at home within yourself. Women can sense when a man is disconnected from himself, and it creates instability. Being unapologetically yourself is not arrogance, it is alignment. It means trusting that who you are is already enough, and that the right people will meet you where you are instead of you having to bend into someone else's expectations. If you do not show up as yourself, you will never attract someone who truly fits your values, your personality, or your emotional needs. Authenticity creates simplicity instead of chaos, and women naturally gravitate toward a man who is steady, centered, and consistent because he feels real and safe. The third truth is how overvalidation creates emotional imbalance. Men often give too much validation not because they are weak, but because they hope kindness will create connection. They think constant reassurances, compliments, and attention will build closeness, but when giving becomes a strategy instead of a sincere expression, it loses its meaning. Overvalidation subtly shifts the relationship dynamic into giver versus evaluator instead of two equals standing on shared emotional ground. When a man overvalidates, he sends the unspoken message that her approval matters more than his self-respect, and once that imbalance forms, attraction decreases without either person fully understanding why. Healthy validation is selective, sincere, and reciprocal, not constant, excessive, or driven by fear. The most grounded men validate when they truly feel it and because they do not their words carry weight. And authenticity. The fourth lesson is building inner stability instead of depending on external approval. Many men live in emotional turbulence because their confidence rises and falls based on a woman's reactions. A fast reply makes them confident. A slow reply makes them insecure. A compliment makes them feel strong. A quiet moment makes them panic. This happens because the emotional center has shifted away from self and onto someone else. And once your peace depends on another person's mood, you lose your grounding. People have bad days, stressful moments, and emotional fluctuations. If your stability is tied to them, you will always feel unstable. The solution is not to perform more or please more, it is to reconnect with your own values, routines, boundaries, purpose, and emotional independence. When a man becomes self-grounded, his relationships improve not because he tries harder, but because he shows up clearer, calmer, and more confident. Women feel safer and more connected to a man who is emotionally steady because he is not collapsing under every shift in energy. Inner stability is deeply attractive because it communicates maturity, leadership, and emotional strength. The fifth principle is why authentic boundaries attract respect. Many men avoid boundaries because they fear losing someone or creating conflict, but avoiding boundaries does not create closeness. It creates emotional passivity, and emotional passivity creates distance, not connection. When a man has no boundaries, he teaches others that his needs require no attention, and over time he becomes overly accommodating, predictable, and drained. A healthy boundary is not anger or control, it is clarity. It sounds like, this is what I need, this is what I expect, this is what I am not comfortable with, this is how I want to be treated. Boundaries build trust because they show you value yourself. And a man who values himself naturally, invites respect, understanding, and embodying boundaries transforms your presence because people take you seriously when you take yourself seriously. The sixth shift is moving from performance to purpose. Many men feel drained because they are always performing, always trying to be whatever someone wants the hardest. Part of performing is that it never ends, and deep down men fear that if they stop performing, the connection will disappear. Purpose liberates you from this cycle. Purpose turns the question from, what do they want me to be, into, what kind of man do I want to be? Purpose anchors your identity so you stop chasing reactions and start living by your values. A man aligned with purpose speaks differently, moves differently, and carries himself with quiet strength. The right person does not want perfection or performance, they want presence. A man standing firmly on his own foundation, purpose, transforms insecurity into direction, confusion into identity, and performance into authenticity. The seventh and final truth is creating connection. From confidence, not need. Real connection grows from groundedness, not grasping. When you stop chasing approval and start standing in your truth, people feel it and they respond naturally. Confidence is not pretending to be strong, it is knowing who you are and not abandoning yourself in the process. Women trust men who trust themselves. And connection thrives when both people feel equal, steady, and emotionally free.